Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our BN360 event with Mike Cardus. My name is Madeline Genovese from the BNP, and I'm so happy to have you all here. Before we get started, we're just going to take a moment to thank the sponsors of the BN360 program this year: Alliance Advisory Group, Dale Carnegie, Evans Bank, Niagara University, Buffalo Rising, Canisius College, Independent Health, and Deweyville College. A huge thank you to our sponsors that make our work possible. The BNP has several events and programming left in the year that we hope you'll join us for. We have an event today at noon that we're going to be discussing the new guidelines for out-of-state travelers. On the 18th, we have a D&I virtual learning series panel discussion. The 19th, we have our annual report to members. And on December 1st, we have our Manufacturing Council meeting to discuss forecasts with U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So to learn more about these events, visit our website at thepartnership.org and register today to secure your seat. It's now my honor to introduce Mike Cardus. Mike is a facilitator of the BNP Executive Exchange Program, and his focused expertise in team building, managerial leadership, and organizational development, working with various businesses, teams, and individuals. Frequently asked to create pragmatic solutions to address the development of high-performance teams, retention of talent, the innovation of product and profit streams, interpersonal and intergroup conflict, coaching of leaders, and developing systems to drive positive behaviors and development of knowledge to increase organizational and personal effectiveness. Mike, it's a pleasure to have you today. I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Maddie. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. So like Maddie said, my name is Mike Cardus. And two things. So I've been doing work with the Niagara Partnership for the past 8 years. So I facilitate the Executive Exchange Group. And I also have did some work early on with the Leadership Exchange Group. So if you want to learn more about the Executive Exchange, ask the partnership, ask your members, learn more about that. And the Leadership Exchange is also a really good program to look at and develop. So today, there's two main goals. Number one, I'm going to walk you through parts of self-awareness. And what I've been looking at lately, especially through COVID and this pandemic time, is how do we begin to create habits or rituals, I'm saying, to look at developing useful change to achieve values you want to achieve. So a lot of this today, as opposed to my other work in organizations, is looking at how do you as an individual begin to identify things you value, things you want to change, and then create a method or what we call a ritual to shift those behaviors to move to a different place. And I'm going to here. So some housekeeping stuff. So feel free to talk in the chat box. There'll be some questions and some images I'll show that I'll ask you to comment on. If you have a question, please put the questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. That way, once I have time for questions and questions come up, I will do my best to answer them. Also, probably towards the end of the webinar today, there'll be time for questions. And secondly, all these slides in their full form will be emailed off to you following the presentation. Anyone who registered will get a copy of the slides, and you can reach out to me anytime, mike@mikecardus.com. So let me go into it. So I like to start with this slide because in many ways, what we're thinking about and what we see is that the behavior and where you start is relatively complex. And I mean complex in that it's an intertangling weave of three things that humans have. And I'm saying this because humans have what we call identity. So you have a consistent form of who you are over a period of time. The identity of who you are has parts of your past, big parts of your present, and impact on your future. We also have intention. Intention means, what do I actually intend to do inside of the situation? So if I want to change my behavior, become a better leader, work on different concepts, what's my intention? And the third part is intelligence. So as humans, we have intelligence that allows for parallel processing. And by parallel processing, what I mean is you can handle multiple things at the same time. Big part of this today is looking at where you are right now, what things you value to get there, and how you can begin making changes in the future. which is part of what this work is about. And at the end, I'll show you a way we use this inside an organization for a team to make team-based change. Essentially, there's 4 things we're going to talk about. And when you're thinking about any change or any way to look at what behaviors you want to adjust, and I think change and behaviors are interchangeable, they're the same thing. There's 4 major topic areas. Number 1 is create. So you're thinking about what new things do I want to create behaviorally? Other part is eliminate. What things do I want to get rid of or sort of deny or stop doing? Then there's accept. What parts do I just have to accept are part of the things I can't change, or recognizing what my current values are, things that I have to accept just are as they exist, and make a column for that. And the last one is preserve. And preserve is saying, I'm currently doing these following things relatively well. I want to maintain these pieces. I don't want to lose those. How do I preserve these things? And this is where we look at how do we begin to identify what's called self-awareness. And we recognize, and this is going to get a little philosophical with the pieces. And the philosophy is going to be, how do we begin to understand that change does not happen by you as an individual? There's a term we use in organizations called social atomism. And social atomism means that to treat individuals as if they are fully autonomous people, which are not colliding with other folks. We know within organizations, within your life, even with COVID and the Zoom stuff, that we need to have interactions. We need to have collisions. We need to create habits where how are you thinking about your interaction with other people and how they interact with you. So what this means at the end is that value, your value, as an individual, as an employee, as a spouse, as a partner, and my value and their value are all interconnected. It's not the solipsistic or the self-focused belief in yourself. It's looking at how do I work with other people and how do I impact them? Self-awareness. So I'm going to just begin the first sort of piece in this workshop talking about self-awareness. And by the way, this is probably one of my favorite slides ever. Some of my human resources partners don't like the slide because it has a picture of a gentleman with his head up his bottom, but it's humorous and it makes me laugh. So, and we all need some humor here. So the big part is saying, what is self-awareness? And self-awareness is knowing who you are and how others see us. That sounds relatively obvious. And we consistently say, in order for change to happen and for me to understand what my values are, I have to increase my self-awareness. Now, increasing self-awareness can be hard because one of the challenging things is once you become more self-aware, you may start to recognize that there's things about yourself or there's things that you claim you value that you aren't actually doing. And to recognize if I say, let's say, here's an example. Let's say I value spending time with my kids and my family. And I say, yes, I'm a really self-aware individual. One of my hard values is spending time with my kids and my family. Yet when you look at my calendar, I don't spend any time with my kids and my family, meaning my alignment of my values are not, that my values are not currently aligned. And that creates a huge issue and a challenge. So I want to share with you guys one resource before I go deeper into this. A couple of years ago, there was a wonderful book written by an author named Tasha Eurich, E-U-R-I-C-H. The book is called Insight. This was probably, I think, 2018 or 19. This, again, hands down, is one of the best sort of leadership, individual change, self-reflection books I've read. Heavily researched. It's a couple hundred pages, 300 and something pages. The citations are probably 30, 40 pages of that. So what Eurich did and her team is they set out to look at self-awareness. Self-awareness being the awareness of how I am and how others see me. And what she found was really interesting. She found that in self-awareness, through her surveys, and again, she defines self-awareness as people's understand who they are, is that 95% of folks thought they were self-aware, but in reality, from her research, only 10 to 15% truly are. And there's a reason for this. She called the folks that were 10 to 15% self-awareness unicorns, mean, they're relatively rare. And when I read this research, it struck a bell with me because I do a lot of individual coaching. So I'll go into organizations, I'll work with managers, frontline staff, executives, and we'll do coaching one-on-one. And one of the big things that people oftentimes do is they can create a false sense of who they are, and that false sense of who they are can create negative behaviors in the workplace. So there are three things she found that impacted this. Number one, we naturally have blind spots. So this is back to the early, those of you who have a background in psychology or psychology 101, that Johari window, the sort of known, unknown, to self, to others. So as humans, we have natural blind spots that we don't sort of look at, right? So there's things that we don't look at. Think about one thing I recognize about myself lately, and I've been watching a lot of my webinars, is I say so a lot. I use so as a filler word. And as I'm going through those patterns, I don't recognize I'm doing it. A way for me to work on being more self-aware through that was watching my videos in these webinars and going, I say so a lot. So we get the self-reflection on that piece. Another part, we are wired to operate on autopilots. We're unaware of how we're behaving and why. So an example of this, think about when you're in a meeting. I sit in a lot of meetings and I see people fall into autopilot in the meetings, not by good or bad, but as humans, we create things called heuristics. Heuristics are rules of thumb or rules of behavior to help make sense of the environment. And oftentimes that heuristic helps us make sense. And sometimes the heuristic may hurt us. So to break the autopilot behavior, you have to create clues or indicators to break that. But it's hard to know you're on autopilot. There's also the feel-good effect. We're happier when we see ourselves in a more positive light. Now, this can sometimes make people in my field a little uncomfortable. I believe in positive psychology. I think it's helpful to have an optimistic outlook. But the one thing we have to be careful of is getting too far down that positive psychology strength-based formula to not identify areas that we're weak or not focusing on. We are much happier when we see ourselves in a positive light. And Uric kind of calls this the cult of self. That comes from the idea of social media creating more self-absorbed and exploding popularity. I'm sure many of you have seen the research that shows how social media, Facebook, Instagram, those sort of things can create increased amounts of depression because in many ways we're only showing our best self. And the reflection of our best self in social media, pushing it out there, creates a positive light on ourselves, which may skew our self-awareness. It may skew it in a negative way or a positive way. So it's being thoughtful of these things. And these three pieces, the blind spots, the autopilot, and the feel-good effect are three things that can skew your self-awareness. Another part was this: how can we become more self-aware? And I'm going to walk you through a method in the second half of this workshop today that shows you how to do this. And it's challenging. I'm going to say that it's challenging because you need to stop and think about who you are, what you want to have happen. And it's okay. When I'm doing coaching work, I tell folks it's okay if you want to continue to not be self-aware. It's a choice you make to make yourself get through the day. And what helps you get through the day is a helpful piece, because the path to self-awareness is challenging. So there's two aspects to address it. Number one, internal self-awareness, an inward understanding of your values, passions, and aspirations. This means, how do I begin to identify what are my values, passions, and aspirations? Now, a fancy word we use is that values are vectors, and a vector is something you put focus into or angle towards. So values are not goals. Goals are rather specific tasks, what by whens you wish to achieve. That's not a value. A goal might be, I want to lose 10 pounds in 95 days. That's a goal. A value might be, I value healthy eating and wellness as a lifestyle. The challenge is defining inside there, your values will identify ways to handle the complexity, that first slide about the overlapping ropes, and to sort of say, in these value-based questions of self-awareness, am I moving closer? Am I attracting this value? Or am I repelling this value? The other part is what we call external self-awareness. Knowing and understanding yourself from the outside in, knowing how other people see you. The interesting thing, and this really kind of blew my mind at first, and then I thought more about it, is that Uric found, surprisingly, people who are externally self-aware don't necessarily tend to be internally self-aware. So what do I mean by that? So if I have a high emotional intelligence or I'm high self-awareness on how others view me, it doesn't by default mean I have a strong inward self-awareness. So those two don't come together, but it's important. And I would argue that as an employee of an organization, as a human, as a partner to somebody, as a family member, the external self-awareness is incredibly important. When I'm doing coaching inside organizations, I explain to folks that how other people see you is the truth of how you're perceived in the organization. I'll repeat that. How other people perceive and see you is how you are perceived as competent or incompetent inside the organization. You might have a strong inward self-belief in your skill sets. If other people see you as an arrogant jerk or as a skeptical critic or as a consistently negative person, that's their truth about you. And we know from a term called the looking glass effect, which essentially means this. We are who we think other people think we are, which is sort of a weird double negative there. So we are who we think other people think we are. So if I begin to think that people think that I'm authoritative, that I'm friendly, that I'm kind, if I think people think of me like that, I'll begin to behave in that way. Therefore, understanding internally what your values are and how others see you are really important. So quick sort of think, break, pause here. I'm going to ask for you in the chat box, if you can, please just type what you see inside this image. So I'll be quiet for 15 seconds. So just type and talk to each other. Comment on what do you see inside this image. Go in the chat box, type it. Good, I'm seeing a floor plan, I'm seeing a couch, I'm seeing a lot of sort of similar responses. Some people who have seen this workshop before know my sort of sneaky tricks, which is fine. Good. So as you're looking at this, I saw a lot of you said instead of floor plan. So when you're looking at this, I use this image a lot. And here's why I use it. Number one, it's a really good way to talk about self-awareness or being able to identify what do I see and how do other people see me. It's also a good example I use inside organizations to talk about the untalkable things. We say that the things that become undiscussable, we make the undiscussable things undiscussable, and that makes them more undiscussable. It's a weird loop there. So when you look at this first, you see these measurements, you see this. Many people see a room or a schematic, an architecture drawing, right? So here's the door, here's the TV, like here's the cabinets, here's a window. And then normally at some point I'll say, do you see the elephant? And then people start to see it. So the elephant itself is right here. And then we start to see, I never even noticed the measurements on the sides. Now I do. The elephant, this actually is from an illustrator called Glenn's, Glennz. And I have a t-shirt with this picture on it. It's my favorite image for groups. So if you look now, the elephant, like here's the elephant's eyeball, here's the trunk, here are the feet of the elephant, here are the feet of the elephant, right? Here's like his ear, there's a saddle on his back. So again, it's a good example to talk about perception and self-awareness and saying, okay, what am I currently seeing? How are others seeing this? And then from the outside perspective and how they're seeing this, how can I work to adjust or change things? Going into now the second part of this is working to understand how do we begin to create and have us live more self-aware lives. I think self-awareness is important and beginning to understand on these matrices here. So this is a question, and normally we're doing it virtually, you'll get all these slides. But these are questions I use with folks to become more self-aware. And those of you who have been in my earlier BN360 talks on solution focused or team development, these are questions you may recognize. And so these are 6 questions that I ask people, and they're tough questions, but you can think about them now and think about them later. But these are ways to start identifying what things you value. And not that it's good or bad. I found, and even myself, my understanding of what my values were didn't really align with what I was doing. Or I was deluding myself that I thought I had certain values, but when I dug a little deeper, they weren't what I actually valued. And that's hard. You want to become self-aware in this pieces. So question number 1, normally we ask, what are your best hopes? The best hopes question begins to identify what your hopes are for the future. And like I said, again, we use the term values are vectors. Values are things you want to go towards. The metaphor I've been using a lot lately is you're at a stream bank and you're on one side of the stream and you want to cross the stream. Your hope is you want to get across that stream to the other side. That may be increased self-awareness, some change you want to have happen, and we have to use stepping stones to get across. The stepping stones are the rituals, and your foot might get wet. It's part of the faith. First question I would ask you is, what are your best hopes? Next one would be, how will your closest friend notice what is different about you when you realize these hopes? So think about it again. Internal self-awareness, what are your best hopes? External self-awareness, how will others notice you being different when you achieve these hopes? And this question is helpful because now you're thinking about how will others see me? The extrospection, the seeing piece is important. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being you can describe your hopes and 1 being the opposite, where are you on this scale? We call this a leveling or motivation question. And oftentimes when this is being done, it can help you figure out how clear am I on what my values are or what my hopes are. I'm using the two interchangeably. And the reason for that is they're consistent. And you'll see as we pull through this. If I go into scale, like my best hopes are to be a good father and husband to my wife, Christine. What are my hopes? How will folks see me doing that, right? I'll be spending time with my kids. I'll be blocking calendar time for them. I'll be doing work at home. Won't be traveling as much. On a scale of 1 to 10, being I can describe this, and 10 being I can describe it, and 1 being the opposite, I'm like an 8. And that helps you figure out where I am. Next part is, what is currently happening that supports the number you chose? This we call a self-efficacy question. So with this, while you're pulling out your hopes and you identify what you want to be, how others will see you living this reality, this change you want to have happen, and the things you want to do differently, more of, less of, what are you currently doing that supports a 3 or a 4? This is saying, okay, you're probably doing some small things already. So inside your daily activities, you are creating a task list. You are making an effort to go to the gym every day at 4 p.m. The health and wellness example. If I'm at a 5, I'm currently taking half of my food portions and throwing it in the garbage. Those things. In your past, how have you been successful in making tough choices? What is different about those times? This also is a self-efficacy question, saying you've achieved values and things in the past. So in the past, you've been successful. You've gotten this far. How did you make that happen? What was different? How are your hopes currently happening even a little bit? This is figuring out what is happening. Can you share or describe 2 or 3 of your hopes or areas of progress? From these 6 questions, if you sit and write these down, and you'll see behind me, I got this whiteboard. I spend a lot of time every probably 6 months to a year answering these questions myself or working with customers or people I'm serving to get these questions answered. It helps. Another way to do this. That was the internal self-awareness piece. What I'm showing you here is feedback from a 360. So those who have taken a 360 feedback, this is a common called a circumgraph, a circular graph of a 360 feedback. And this actually is these are my results. So this creates that good part on how other people see you. So sometimes when I'm coaching people, I'll use this 360. This 360 looks at behaviors and personality. It's a wonderful piece, and it gives you, what I like about it is it gives you negative feedback. So if you look at this, my self-profile here, these pieces on the top, from social ability over to conscientiousness and slightly competitiveness, these are positive behaviors, or we call sort of attractors. The ones in the bottom, from need to control all the way to approval seeking, those are derailing behaviors or things that get in the way of you being successful. So when I did this, I recognized myself as an incredibly tense, dependent, approval seeking person with a high need to control and really competitive. Now, inside my own head, I think people pick up on my tension and I think they see this. So in my self-awareness, this is me, right? This is my crazy inside Mike Cardus's head, looking for approval, trying to be sociable, not being very helpful, craving some sort of order. And this is the feedback I got from 9 raters. And raters were people I sent the feedback off to capture how they perceived me. And some of them were people that I worked with that I know I had a challenging relationship with, and it came out much different. This is a way to look at that introspection, internal self-awareness versus extrospection. And from the 6 questions I gave you earlier, and from something like this, you don't need something like this. You can answer those 6 questions yourself. It helps to create the change process. All right, now I'm pivoting a little bit to this. I'm going to stop the share. I've gone through 2 major things. Number 1, we've set up self-awareness. Self-awareness is developing a change. Now, you don't have to be deeply self-aware to make a change happen. This is saying, how can I improve myself to make things better? Number 2, I've talked a little bit about internal and external self-awareness. And I've given you 6 or 7 solid questions you can ask yourself to go, as an individual, right now, here as a person, what things do I want to work on? And if these hopes are my values, how do I start putting energy towards those pieces? The energy piece is important because with the energy, it's again is saying, how do I create this habit or this ritual to make this happen? That's where my language and rituals comes up. And one divergent piece. As we're going through COVID, I want you guys to begin to understand this. As humans, ritual behavior, repeated actions that we can count on are incredibly important to create some kind of structure or platform to stand on. You'll see at the end of this, I'm going to give you my ritual of daily check-ins based upon my values to show you how we make change happen. It comes back to this, and this is called Marshall Goldsmith's Wheel of Change. And on here, and remember, you'll get all these slides, are these what we call 4 major areas, right? We have creating. So I go through my values. I'll share my values in a second. And we say, out of my values, what new behaviors or actions do I want to create? I'll show examples in a second. I mean, I want to add something to my repertoire or invent a new behavior or a new action. It's important to create new things that keeps you moving forward. On the other end, this negative part here is eliminating. That's saying, what kind of actions or behaviors do I want to stop doing? Do I want to eliminate? And creating action steps, we call them if, when, then statements to say, if I am doing this, then I will stop doing that when I see this change happen. To identify what things you want to stop. So I used earlier the example of spending time with my kids. Eliminate is, when I see my calendar filling up for the week, I will stop having meetings and make time for my kids on the calendar. Meaning I'm going to block meeting time or work time to spend time with my kids. It's a choice I have to make. And it's one that if I want to be true to my values of self-awareness, I put that as an action step. On the other end of creating, we have accepting. This is saying, what kind of things do I have to accept? Oftentimes when I'm doing management training or coaching with frontline staff, it's accepting that you work for an organization that has certain rules and things you can't control. Or it's also accepting that, hey, I have this boss or manager that I have to accept right now. It's just how things are. One of my favorite acceptings was I was coaching a lawyer, and he put in his list, I have to accept that I'll never be a professional golfer. And normally I don't ask questions about the statements. I'll show you in a second. I just let them go and we ask about them. I don't ask the meaning behind them. But one day at the end of our coaching session, it was almost 15 months of work. I asked him, I go, you put this, never accept you'll be a professional golfer. Why? And he said, Mike, I was spending a lot of time at the golf course My wife was mad at me. My family was mad at me, and I was losing my family. One of the values I wrote down there was family time. And I recognized that by me golfing so much, I wasn't spending time with my family, so I had to stop golfing. And that kept this family together. Last example. Other one is probably my favorite, preserving. This is saying, what sort of things do you want to keep? There are a lot of things you're doing really damn good right now. What things do you want to keep doing or accentuate to improve or maintain? So inside these 4 quadrants, creating what behaviors do you want to create? What behaviors based upon your values or your feedback do you want to eliminate or get rid of? What behaviors or actions do you want to accept? What behaviors or actions do you want to preserve? Now my favorite part. You will get this handout and you will have all this stuff. Additionally, I'll put the opportunity out there twice. If any of you want to reach out to me afterwards and go through this, or you want me to give you feedback on your action steps, I will do it. You're in Buffalo. I like this work. We'll do it. This is a handout I give people. What behaviors can you actively control? A behavior I choose to add or create is. How will others notice this behavior change? How will I notice it? So think about the first half of the workshop, self-awareness, others, other people seeing you, internal stuff. These questions will start to drive the change you want to have happen. And the change can be something simple, right? Like, hey, I want to get promoted at work. Cool. I want to get noticed more at work. Awesome. I want to become better at public speaking. Crushing it. I want to learn how to make pivot tables on Excel. It can fit anything you want. You just got to create a series of steps to make it happen. So again, you'll see there's the create. You'll see there's create. You'll see there's preserve or enhance. A behavior I choose to eliminate is. A behavior I choose to accept is. By going through this process, answering the 7 questions, doing this handout, you'll begin to start crafting solid behavior steps to make yourself better. And it takes effort. Yet a lot of it you're already doing. Next part. Coming back together. Here are, as I go through this and realize I update this every 6 months to a year, these are my 3 sort of values or hopes. And again, I'm using the word interchangeably, but I like to share these. People often ask about this. Like, Mike, you do this work. What are your values? And these are my things I come up with. Number 1, increase work with current past clients and identify new or unique opportunities for progress through strengthening. ODMC is my company's name, Organization Development by Mike Cardus, outreach and content. This is helping clients. To me, that's something I really value. So every day I ask myself, am I doing this? And how am I doing? Number 2, innovate and develop new or unique ways to improve client condition and support clients to be seen as heroes of their work. This is important to me. I want people to be seen as heroes inside their work, not for me to be seen as a hero. I want to be the person behind the scenes to help you be more effective. My 3rd value that I value as a person, be the best dad / husband I can be through kindness, teamwork, doing my best. And it's funny. So this kindness, teamwork, do your best, that's our family value. I'm going to get a little hokey here, but my kids are now 6. So I have 6-year-old twins. And before they were born, Christine, my wife, and I were talking a lot about raising kids, what we value, how we want our kids to be raised, what we want them to kind of think about, what our mantra is for behavior in the house. And we came up with these 3 things: kindness, teamwork, do your best. So anyone who's seen me with my kids, I say that all the time to them. Every morning before they get in the bus, every nighttime before they go to sleep, they constantly hear it. I'm trying to drive those values into them. And they have them, I believe. What do we do with this? Answer those questions. So I answered those questions. I'm going to spend the last half on going through this. This can be a little intimidating, overwhelming. And it's easy to do. You just got to do it. What I'm going to share with you are 14 questions, and I'll show you how I do it every day. So I talked earlier, let me just kind of go so you can see my face. I talked earlier about developing rituals. And for you to achieve or increase self-awareness, you need to develop a ritual to where you're checking in on what you're doing. Oftentimes, people will say to me, Mike, I want to get better at not escalating fights or conflict inside the workplace. And they say it once and it kind of goes away and they forget about it. You need to create a ritual or a way to pattern and come back to saying, if I value these things, how do I notice the effort I'm putting forth to make these things happen? Effort is what makes the difference happen. Additionally, it's an amazing thing we're seeing now from the change in the world. We're seeing that in many ways now, excessive amount of quantity, putting small steps in, creates better quality. There's some really good research out there that comes from another book that I can't find right now. It talks about people who tend to succeed more. So think about that Michael Jordan quote that I've missed 5,000 shots, but I've made so many. The more you put effort into doing the things that are your values in a daily practice, the more likely you are to achieve them. Additionally, once you say, these are my values, I want to drive towards these things, you have to create a ritual to kind of go back to it, to go over it, to keep consistently doing it. I'm going to share with you now the Excel spreadsheet and how I do this. Additionally, I'll encourage you to make this yourself and see how it goes. So there's 14 questions. These questions here are what we call the standard questions. So what we do is we create statements, but these are ones that are in every Excel spreadsheet. So I'll explain this. What I do is I make an Excel spreadsheet with you, and we grade this with questions. All the questions you'll notice are active, as opposed to saying, did I wait for my manager to set clear goals? Did I set clear goals? They're all in active sense with you putting action towards the values you put in place. So 6 questions we start off with are, did I do my best to set clear goals? And every day, I'll show you my chart, or with the folks I coach, every day you complete this chart. Did I do my best to set clear goals? Did I do my best to make progress towards goal achievements? Here's why that part is there. I might set really good goals for today. So currently, if I think about my client portfolio, I have on the low end, which is a bad month, 11 clients. I can handle up to 30. Right now, I have 24. 24 different clients from different companies all over the world that have different needs. While I said earlier, I don't like setting goals for myself, I know for my clients, I have to set work goals. If you wait for your boss or your manager to set goals for you, or even on your day to set goals, they're not going to do it for you. Take some accountability. But we do know that sometimes everything falls apart. So I may do my best to set really clear goals for the day, but suddenly a client emergency happens and I get nothing done. Third question is, did I do my best to find meaning? Did I find meaning in my day? This is saying, again, people don't create meaning for you. You create meaning for yourself. You take action in your own sense. Did I do my best to be happy? You can choose, and it's a choice, to be unhappy, and it's okay to be unhappy. I'll admit that during this COVID stuff, I've had some of the COVID depression days. There's been some nights where I've just stayed up too late, probably drank too much and slept too much. And I make an effort to at least make some parts of being happy in there, finding what gives me some sort of joy. Did I do my best to build positive relationships? This is the other people perspective, the extrospection. Did I do my best to be fully engaged? And these other questions, but I won't walk through these in detail. I want to kind of save time for Q&A also, are the other questions I ask myself every day. So I'll walk through, and you'll see these are part of my values, right? Create intentional, slow pause points with others. Listen deeply, support others. This one is an important one to me. Did I do my best to work out and sweat? So I realized, and this is me getting older, is that I don't want to die young. My family, my mother and father both died in their 60s. And my father's father and his parents also died in their 60s. So I'm consistently afraid of dying young. It's maybe not a healthy fear, but it's something it's a value that I have to be with my family and Christine. So working out also keeps me pretty strong. Being kind, this sounds weird. Some people ask me, Mike, you are pretty kind. Openly, this is where I kind of have a hard time with the be yourself, the authentic leader. I can be a rather sarcastic, sort of unempathetic person sometimes. I have to be thoughtful to be kind to others and make sure that I'm making the effort. And the last one, did I do my best is to show love and support to Christine? Did I do my best to create products for the outreach? These questions were all driven from my values. And that question I have on the create, What behaviors do you want to create? How will others see it? Eliminate, preserve, accept. These questions are something I check in on every day. And you'll see here, I'm going to show you the Excel spreadsheet in a couple seconds. This actually is how I score it every day. So every day in my project management app, I have a answer checking questions. It takes me 3 to 5 minutes to do these. I just kind of bang through these quickly. And I score my efforts. I score effort because effort is that I actually try to get that done today. Not did I get it done, did I put the effort forth to make it happen? 10 being full effort, 1 being the opposite. And I color code this because it's a fun way to do Excel. And you'll see these are the responses. So every day I go through this, and every day, yep, I will send, I'm seeing some questions in that too. I'll send the questions, I'll send all this stuff off to you guys. Every day I go through this and I check in on these pieces. And hang on. And this here is just the way I graph it. It's not really helpful. It's a graphing piece. But this is really helpful. And when I work with clients, I'm going to show you an example, and then I'll show you mine coming up in a second. I see somebody's raised their hand. I'll show you mine. I'll go through when I work with clients in coaching, we answer and we make this chart for them. I make this Excel chart with them and I check in. So this is the way to graph it. Comes back to this. I want to have time for one more thing, not to rush. So here's how this helps. And you can do it yourself. Oddly enough, you can do your own self check-in. I found though that it helps to have groups of peers. So when I first started doing this, I contacted a mentor of mine, Larry, and Larry actually called me every day. Also with some clients, currently I have 4 clients who are at this level of service where I call them every day. So from 7 to 8:30, I call 4 different people. They open their Excel document and we go through their check-in questions. It keeps the accountability there. That's the cadence. That's the self-awareness piece. So it helps with daily phone call. So people call you. A weekly coaching meeting to kind of go over it, see how you're doing, accountable team meetings. So some groups I've worked with, if all individuals do this, they meet and they go through it as a team and they talk about it. If you want to try this with a peer or a work partner to kind of say, let's just go through our Excel sheets, it creates that accountability piece. That's that interoperability, the piece of me talking to somebody else, sharing. Also, me sharing these Excel sheets with you guys makes you be more focused on this. Here's why this works. You control what you wish you would change an effort into. I'm currently doing a series of leadership workshops in Singapore, at a university in Singapore, to their MBA students. And it was funny, one of the students actually asked me, so when we begin a leadership program, I have everybody do this, create a goal they want to work on for themselves and create an Excel spreadsheet. And we check in every week on the Excel spreadsheet to keep some accountability going and look at progress or regress. One of the students asked me, how will you know, Mike, if I'm being honest in the responses? And my answer was, I won't know. You'll know. If you choose to bullshit yourself on this Excel spreadsheet, that's your choice. You have choice over what you put effort into. If I want to say that I worked out today, but I didn't actually work out today, that's you. It's not me. I have to recognize this is a tool for you yourself to put effort into to make yourself better or to focus on your values and goals. It's quick. It's a quick 5 to 10 minute process to self-score. I know some people like doing journaling. I think journaling is helpful. I also, which is a weird secret about Mike, I also meditate for about 20 minutes a day, which helps me kind of calm down my internal stuff. This is a quick cadence check-in. It's a quick way to say Excel spreadsheet, numbers out. And by doing it every day, it reinforces me thinking about it. Because I know if I'm talking to Christine downstairs, my wife, and I find myself not being helpful, in my head, the question pops up and it reminds me. As humans, you need to have these heuristics, that autopilot thing to kind of say, all right, I said I'm going to do these things. Am I doing these things? And an everyday check-in keeps you accountable to that. Knowing someone beside you is going to ask about your effort keeps it happening. That accountability partner keeps things going forward. So if you have a coach or a mentor or you're part of an internal organization, share the Excel spreadsheet. Talk about what you're doing. Share it with your partner or spouse or your dog or your cat. Share it with yourself. Each behavior is something you can change It doesn't depend on somebody else to do something for you or for someone else to change. That's a big piece. When I'm doing coaching workshops, a lot of people want somebody else to change, right? I want employee X to become kinder to me. Well, you can't make them be kinder to you. You can change the way you approach them. You can change the way you approach your boss. You can change your behaviors. Now, that doesn't justify their behaviors. There's a whole other workshop on that, but you have action on this. Doing this with a team or peers creates a shared model or process of shared language. I love teamwork, and this helps with this. 2 more slides. This is the scoring matrix again. This is a messy handwriting. I did this with a team of 6 people, and the team of 6, we got together into in their office building. We wrote down, and you'll see, I'll show you the question in a second. You'll see their create behaviors as a team. This was not individuals. It was saying, as a team, what are our hopes? And they define their hopes as being seen as an abundant team, holding each other accountable. And there was a third thing there I forgot. This is their create, this is their accept, eliminate, preserve. Here's their questions. And you'll get a copy of this. So I'll just kind of go through it. But in this process, each employee, all 6 of the employees on this team, they had put inside their teamwork, or they used Asana, one of their project management apps. And at the end of the day, at 4:30, it said complete check-in questions. Each employee then opened their Excel spreadsheet on Google Sheets, and they answered 1 to 10 in their own perspective. Did I do my best to follow building a project process? 1 being least effort, 10 being maximum effort. And they answered all 19 of these questions. Then at 4:40, they all turned to each other, opened their document up, and just read through their scores, right? So like 10, 2, 3, 6, 4, 9, 8, 9, 7, and they read their numbers to each other. And then they discussed an area they did well as an individual and an area they did poorly as an individual. By doing that, it created a shared ritual or cadence on discussing things a team values as a whole and things they're putting effort into. Because if I commit myself to being a good team member and my feedback is in developing these values or these habits, and I say every day we as a team have to get better at those, and we all agree upon that piece, each team member has to do their part to make it happen. Otherwise, you're creating that lack of alignment and awareness. And each team member has to have reciprocity to put the process focused. There needs to be a cadence or ritual behind it. So with this is the big piece. So we say, again, you have to focus on developing these behaviors together. And that's it. So I'm Mike Cardus. I briefed this with you guys, and I'm going to, at the end, you'll have my email address. I'll send you all these pieces. And we'll go into questions in 1 second. So there's 2 major things I want to move forward. This was about change. Now, the change you're doing in that Excel document doesn't have to be big value-based change, right? It may be something simple like, I want to get better at having less spelling errors in my reports I turn into my boss. You can do that. I use this personally as a way to frame, as a way to frame what I value and get things done. And it's a way for me to keep some self-control. So with this, we have time left for some questions. And so I'm going to, I see we have a question in the Q&A, and let's see where that is. So good question. So Michelle here says, how long does this take you? How do you find time to do this? Really good question. So I'm going to answer it live. I'm going to answer it live. So I'll show you really quickly, and then we'll come back. I'll show you quickly kind of a real-time example. So stay here. I'm going to show you my current document, and it's going to seem a little overwhelming, but you'll also be able to see this now. This is my living current Excel document. I'll make it a little bigger so you can read it. I added a question to the end. So these are the same things. I added, did I do my best to challenge my thinking and accept my internal critic? So literally what I'll do is today, I'll write 11:17. Normally, like in my day, my kids, they're 6, are in bed by 8:15, 8:30. right? So they're in bed by 8:30. Because I have a wonderful wife, Christine, and we were good at putting them on a schedule. In kindness, teamwork, do your best. So they stay in the room pretty solid and they sleep good. So 8:30, usually I clean up downstairs for a bit, take care of dishes, bring the garbage out, pop up in my office for my closing nighttime stuff. Again, because I value being with my family. So some of my day goes towards my kids' time, not all work time. I get a lot of work done. And then literally to get this done takes me 3 minutes. So I'll go through, okay, I know the questions and I've done this. I'll kind of go back. This is charted out from January of this year. So you can look at my trends. This is all the data from January this year. So at this point, literally, like I answer the questions in probably 3 minutes. So I'll say to myself, did I do my best to set clear goals? So I'll say 8. Progress to the goals, 3. Did I do say a meaningful day? I'll think meaningful day, kind of, yeah, 8. Was I happy? 10. I'll do it almost that fast. Because to me, it's a habit. Now, you can be more thoughtful about it. I encourage people to just move through it pretty fast. And what I found when I do this with coaching clients is for the first 2 or 3 weeks, it's challenging. For the first 2 or 3 weeks, they have a hard time with it. They had to set a reminder. But after that, once you get in it, it just becomes a habit and a quick feedback. And the thing to be thoughtful of is not to be too hard on yourself. Like you saw in my thing, there's some days where like, let me go back to share screen. There's some days, sorry guys. There's some days where I totally suck, right? Where I blew it. I'll be honest. Like, look at like this COVID thing. Look at my exercise, right? Like, did I do my best to work out and sweat? So I can be honest with you guys. So like, knowing I was going to see you today as a group, I worked out last night because I knew I'm going to see the group today. And if I'm 4s all the way across the board, not working out, I'm not being honest to myself. So it's been hard with COVID. Things have been tough. I mean, look at these days. Like on the 7th, I made no progress on my goals. Right? This was a pretty rough day. November 8th was a rough day on me. I had a hard day. Part of it is accepting that not every day is sunshine and rainbows. Some days just really, really suck. And there's tomorrow. It's helpful. So I get through it pretty quick. It helps me roll through this. Next question from Adam. Thank you. Adam says, do you use the same questions for extended periods of time, or do you make adjustments periodically, say annually? The answer is yes. So every quarter, plus or minus every 3 to 6 months, I'll go through the questions again. I'll update them and change them. At this point, I've been doing this process for myself since 2015. So I have it pretty locked in as far as what my values are and what the questions are. I do recommend that if you're doing this, you go through the same 6 value questions, those ones, what are my hopes, achievable things, and realign those. And if you want to change them, I recommend you change them. It's healthy to update them. It's also healthy as a human, like I mentioned, the 3 parts of being a human: identity, intention, intelligence, to say that my identity changes. So there's a good amount of research on adult learning and adult education to say, as you age, your values shift or change. The Mike in his 20s who valued climbing up the career ladder, meeting girls and like having a good time, has changed the Mike in his 40s who values staying home with his family, reading books, and helping people. It's okay. Identity is over time, and you're not a static person. There's some parts of you that are relatively static, and those heuristic, those autopilots keep you in track, but revisiting the questions keeps you on your toes, realigning your values. I see Lindsay asks, what is the 360 tool that you use or recommend? So, and again, if anyone's interested, I can email you more about this. So I use something called the LMAP, which is the Leadership Multi-Rater Assessment of Personality. LMAP is developed by a guy named Dr. Ron Warren, who I've done some work with and I spend time with. I think it's a really good tool. I went through many 360s to evaluate their utility. And I know Lindsay, and Lindsay knows it pretty well. I'm pretty skeptical about assessments. Like I don't like them for a variety of reasons. This 360 I do like, and it's used, it's heavily researched and heavily validated. So Ron worked early on in Apple, and he worked in California to create a lot of the validated assessments and tools. And it's long. So the report, a leadership, it's called LMAP, Leadership Multi-Rater Assessment Personality. You get about 85 pages. You get the circuit graph, the rater breakdowns. You get a long narrative on kind of how you see yourself. You get a long narrative how others see you. Then there's comments. And the great thing about that 360, if we use it, is that my favorite example is this. I was working with a surgeon, a doctor at Baltimore, and he self-scored himself in his self-awareness as a really good team player, really easygoing. People like him. He's really likable. We read his rater report. They slammed him, aggressive, hostile, not, creates tension. So his alignment was tough, and it helped to get those parts put in place. All right. So are there any more questions? Anything else in the chat box? So in closing, you're going to get the slides. I'm going to give you all the stuff that I share with the group, all those questions, and I'm sincere about this. Again, I work with a partnership. We care about you as people in Buffalo. In this time, it's helpful to have this cadence and repetition. If you want to reach out to me, my information's on those slides. If you want to even develop the Excel spreadsheet and email it back to me, I can give you feedback. We can talk about it. One thing I recommend is that you go back, you look at those 6 questions, the value-based questions that I put up there, you answer those, being honest with yourself. It's going to seem rather abstract, and that's okay. Values are vectors. They are large areas or large lines that you put time and energy into. They're not defined endpoints. They're open-ended things you move towards. So we say a lot of times in the complexity language, I want to create more stories like these, more stories with helping my clients be heroes, and less stories of Mike being the smart guy in the room. How do I create more stories of clients being heroes? How do I create less stories of Mike being the smart guy? As I'm developing more of those narratives, I'm checking in on myself, I change my behavior to live my values. Work on that. Because at the end, all you can do is control yourself and accept who you are. So again, thank you. I'm Mike Cardus from Organization Development by Mike Cardus. I also facilitate and highly recommend the exchange groups. The executive exchange in the partnership is for senior leadership. We currently have 45 people from all different sectors, nonprofit, manufacturing, health and human services. It's a beautiful group that I facilitate with 2 other people. Additionally, I recommend the Leadership Exchange. I know Lindsay Zajac is on the call. I saw her. Lindsay and other facilitators lead the Leadership Exchange. That is for leaders and managers. It creates tools, peer networks, ways to get access to get things done, and it works on making you a better leader in the community. Any questions, reach out to me. You'll have the slides. That's all I got for today. So thanks, guys. Have a good day.